Hello, it's Professor Vitale again, and over this weekend I had the opportunity to play in two Nightmare Cups. Today we're just going to cover one cup and kind of go over the team since I use the same team for both tournaments. So my lineup was Aloe and Eradicate, Hypno, Zot2, Drapion, Toxicroak, and Claydol. Before I start showing the matches, I want to talk a little bit about my strategy beforehand. My decision for this cup took two paths. The first one was to lead Eradicate, as I felt it was the strongest. It had the strongest matchups, and if I didn't lead Eradicate, then I would lead Toxicroak, and the next two Pokemon would either be two Psychics or two Darks. The main strategy is to lead Eradicate, have Toxicroak in the back, and one of my three Psychic users, whichever one was the strongest against their team, would take that spot. Pretty simple strategy. So let's get into the games. Our first matchup was against Glockbell. We can see she has Primeape, Spiritomb, Machamp, Mr. Mime, Bronzong, and Skuntank. We decided to stick with the strategy this time. Obviously, we didn't have a fair matchup, and this is one of our first mistakes that we made in this tournament. Is I didn't know that Machamp got Rock Slide, and we paid for that. But it was okay. Toxicroak can come in, finish up Machamp. It's got an okay matchup against Bronzong. He's unfortunately going to go down, but we have Eradicate, who is incredibly strong against any Psychic users. So we're just kind of hoping at this point the last guy in the back is going to be weak to Eradicate. And it is, so we catch a win on that. So that's a good start. But we're also going to see one of the biggest mistakes that I made for this tournament, because I didn't prepare for this one as much because I was more focused on regionals this past week. Our Eradicate does not have Quick Attack, it has Bite. And you could see that it's not the worst position to be in. In this matchup in particular, we decided to continue with the same strategy and just look at how much Bite melts a Psychic user. Second mistake that I just made as well, I probably should have kept the Eradicate in, so it really wasn't worth switching in Hypno just to die. But at least at this point we know Eradicate is strong against two of her Mon, so if we keep it with shields in the back, then we should be fine. So her last guy is also weak to Eradicate, so in this case we're just going to switch to Toxicroak because we know we can burn the last shield, and then we know Eradicate will be able to come in, and despite having Bite, should be able to kill Spiritomb with quick attacks and finish off Mr. Mime with the crunch. So very good games, Glockbell. My strategy just seemed to work for me in that particular matchup. So game 2, we're against a really good opponent, Kyle Styles. We decided to stick with the strategy once again, and he hard called me. So we're already in a bad position, especially because Kyle's a really good player. His team composition is going to be good, especially on if we both decide to use a rock, paper, scissors type of strategy. So coming back from a bad lead in this cup is really hard, especially if your opponent is being consistent, using a consistently balanced team. So he got the deficit early on, and there's not much we can do. I mean, this last guy was Toxicroak as well. I pretty much knew at that point that it was going to be, but it's whatever. Toxicroak goes down. Good game. So the second game, we decide for our first time to go with our Toxicroak lead with two Darks in the back. His team is Hypno, Toxic. It's virtually a mirror match, so I felt maybe that we might be able to catch Eradicate as a lead this time around, which we did, which is very, very fortunate for me. So he hard switches into Xatu. We all know Raticate. In this particular instance, we're just melting Xatu away with Bite, and not getting to the charged attacks is just probably the more optimal thing. It's okay if Raticate goes down. I decided to bring in Drapion here because I know Aqua Tail comes in pretty quickly, and I was just kind of being conservative with my Toxicroak because I didn't want him to come out and instantly die, and then also have a poor matchup with Drapion. I was a little bit worried here in the end. I didn't know how he was going to waste his last shield, but I felt if I can get a crunch in, the Aqua Tail spam would be fine. I was just really, really afraid my Drapion would go down too quick, and Spirit Tomb would have a Shadow Ball ready for my Toxicroak in the end. But fortunately enough, Drapion holds on with just a little bit of HP, and we can get that last charge move off. So we're going to go to a game 3. This time, I decide to just stick to the game plan from the previous game. I felt maybe he might think I would overpredict. So here is another instance of where not having all the tools could have made a difference. I have not learned how to properly, it's not switching charge move priority, but getting in an additional hit in between charge moves for somebody who does have priority could have won me this game. I learned it at the end of this tournament, but in hindsight, this whole game could have changed because I would have had a Toxicroak I would have had my Toxicroak still alive at the end of this, and also in this particular scenario, Quick Attack is going to get his charge moves off way faster than mine. I don't think I would have been able to get another charge move off anyways, but it didn't make a difference. We were already in a losing situation. So our next opponent is Zero Cools. His team is Shiftry, Toxicroak, Xatu, Raticate, Lucario, and Chimecho. So we stick with the game plan. I felt that Claydol was the stronger option, as his team was particularly weak to ground. Claydol completely walls Toxicroak, and if it can get a Earth Power off on Lucario, it's also really good. But you can also see that my Claydol does not have the second move. I didn't have enough time to earn enough Stardust to give him his second move, but I felt he'd still be strong. Earth Power was the main thing that I was trying to use for this cup, but we'll see in our next round how the second move could have actually made a huge difference. So we catch the win on that one. Our game 2 was the first time that I decided to break away from my strategy. I felt he would try to hard read me and counter my obvious switch to a fighting Pokemon in the beginning. So I decided to use Hypno. In this matchup, we like this one. We know that everybody knows Xatu's going to go down to 1 Shadow Ball. So trading a shield here was okay. So Raticate comes in, melts the Xatu. But then here, he made a hard read, knowing that I was going to switch out my Raticate. But sadly, Toxicroak was my guy in the back, who runs through Lucario and then also takes down Raticate fairly easy. I think it was just a poor team composition. If his last guy was a Psychic user, it would have for sure been a really good read to switch in immediately, because the Toxicroak coming in was obvious. Our last matchup, I want to stop this really fast, because this is the most important matchup that I had all day. We get the most information from this game, so I don't have it sped up, so we can cover the more important details. So his team is Blaziken, Hypno, Toxicroak, Skuntank, Alolan Muck, and Raichu. Raichu I'm a little bit afraid of, but my team isn't particularly too weak to it. So I don't think that it's going to come. And I felt that Claydol was one of our strongest options here. I did elect to use Drapion this time around and not Raticate as my lead. Probably my first big mistake. But let's watch as the game pans out. So Aquatail comes really fast. I did not check any simulations for this cup. So I'm just assuming that Aquatail is going to be favorable for us, because we resist that. I also felt that I would not take a lot of damage from a Dark Pulse. So here he'll come in with a Dark Pulse, even though I had its stat dropped too. And I thought I would only take like 15%, but no. Barely was able to survive that. So off comes another Aquatail. He blocks it just fine. I'm going to opt to go into Toxicroak because I do not want my Claydol taking any damage. So it finishes off the Muck. Quick switch into Hypno, and now this is where the second move would have 100% mattered and made a difference. The reason being is Gyro Ball charges faster than Earth Power, so I have to force both of my shields because I have to keep the Claydol in as long as I can, because too many confusions from a Hypno is going to shred Toxicroak. So right here, where we can clearly see he's going to shield this last Earth Power, I have just enough time. I would have had enough energy saved up for a Gyro Ball, because now both shields are down, and actually we're almost able to pull off an Earth Power. You can see where I'm going to start clicking on it, but the Shadow Ball comes off first. If I would have had Gyro Ball, it would have charged up faster than the Earth Power, and we would have knocked out the Hypno. So then we would have gotten a Claydol matchup against his last mod, which would have survived would have died to a Thunder Punch from a low and right shoe. But our Toxicroak could have possibly came in there and hit a Mud Bomb off. Even right there was really, really close, because I could have potentially got a Mud Bomb off and won the game. So we lose game 1. Game 2, we decide to lead with Toxicroak, and this is a very, very important game. I have charge move priority, and I did not know how charge move priority worked at this point. And this is where I need to learn how this... Well, I've already learned it, but now I need to start practicing it, as it's going to make a huge difference. You can see right there, he clearly got in another hit before his charge move went off. So then, as we can see slowly here, I'm going to get off my next charge move, which he's going to block. And he's already ahead in HP because he got that extra hit in before his Mud Bomb come off. And as you can see right here, I got that one hit on my Toxicroak. Probably should have just let it die at this point, but both of our guys in the back were Dark users, so it was like, we can't do that. Or not Dark users. I probably should have let the Toxicroak just die there. But the Hypno comes in, and you can see I got the hit off, so that we know the Toxicroak's going to die right away. But it would have been a huge, huge difference if I would have had my Toxicroak live beforehand. And here is almost is 100% a game-changing play. Hypno survives an Acid Spray at, what was that, like 15, maybe like 20%. and just enough HP to fire off a Focus Blast to knock out the Muk. If he would have just not Acid Sprayed, saved up for a Dark Pulse, I would have 100% lost this game. So in comes the Hypno, who can obviously one-shot my Raticate, but the bites are just ripping through it. When with no shields, this Crunch is gonna. I was sweating on this one because I thought if he gets a Focus Blast off, then that's it. We lost. So we're taking it to a game 3, and even the game 3 is a nail biter here. This was actually one of my favorite opponents that I've got to play this weekend too. So we decide to go with Claydol, Toxicroak, and a low Eradicate. Even though I know that the second charge move is so important on this Claydol, but we read the opener, which is great. He switches immediately to Muk. Could have probably stayed in, but I know that the Claydol hard walls Toxicroak. It resists both of its moves. So I felt it was probably more safe to just switch into Toxicroak, because he's going to do his job right here, which is take out the Dark User. In comes the Hypno. We just let the Toxicroak die, because now we have Raticate. He will more than likely switch back into Toxicroak, so we just got to be ready for it. That's why we kept the Claydol. Gonna block this. Shadow Ball. Shield Bait. Switches out just in time for the Toxicroak. Got a little bit of charge up. So switch to the Claydol. Even though we're down shields. No matter what it is, we're going to be fine. Shoot off the Earth Power. He's got 2 shields. We'll take it out with fast moves anyways. He decides to keep both shields. Probably smart. But his Hypno's too weak. With 1 shield, I'll be completely fine. Shields. Once again, the Gyro Ball could or could have not came into play there, as it would have charged up faster than the Earth Power. But we know you would have shielded it. But really, really good games. Lugia, best burb, which it is the best burb. He was a really, really good opponent. He was, by far, he knew what he was doing. That was my favorite game, because there was technical stuff that went on, and he had good team composition. He knew what he was doing. We talked a little bit afterwards too. So this tournament was at Michigan, our Novi tournament. I want to thank the leadership. They did a really good job. They have a lot of participants for the tournaments that I've went to. Their players are good. But our next video will be tomorrow. I did another one on Sunday. The team's just a little bit different, so be prepared for the next one, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the better video quality. I'm trying to change a few things up, and I think it looks pretty nice. So, and if you could, please subscribe and check out my links in the description. Check out my Discord, and have a good day.